It's just a typical early summer evening in New York. I love summer here. Don't try that shot at home, by the way. I want to look at a body of work I've been preparing for the past couple of months for two shows this fall, 2011, and one show next spring in 2012. And this body of work in general seems to be ebbing back more towards a traditional landscape position, and that there are arcs of horizon lines toward the top, and there's that lambent sense of hazy atmosphere toward the center, and then these plunging vertical figurative elements, tree-like elements, which I refer to as visual signifiers, a term I learned from William Dunning. And again, they're meant to reaffirm the position of the viewer, the vertical viewer standing before the horizontal painting, to implicate the viewer, looking at the painting hanging on the wall in a room. But they're also meant as spatial dividers, as ways of creating smaller pictures within a larger picture, which I think is important. Get up close here a little bit. You can see that the palette is a bit more tonal in this one, at least. I've been looking at a lot of late George Inness and John Twachtman. I'm going to move over to this side. And this is one of the new 13-foot paintings. And again, it's about halfway finished. I don't normally show things that are in progress, but I thought it might be fun to look at these now and then come back to them in 3 months or something toward the end of summer and see where they are. You might be surprised. And I'll pan over to this side, and there's a second 13-foot painting. And here a bit more of a decisive contrast in temperature in the colors. Cold icy greens on the left, the lower left, and then countered by these warmer cadmiums, naphthol crimsons, magentas, raspberry colors toward the right side of the painting. Then back over here. And it's 6:30, so I'm going to order some Chinese food. See you in a minute. Okay, it's been about 2 weeks since we've seen this painting. This is about finished. I've run a couple of Indian yellow glazes over the whole thing to even out the tonality. And I've accentuated a few areas at the top with Hansa yellow light, and also down here. And I like the way that color, it crackles and it pulls the eye deeper and deeper in between the vertical elements. I've also worked on the movement of the purples on the right side. This is my favorite stage in a painting, is these little, almost imperceptible modulations of color. And we'll look at this big one over here. This one also is not finished, but it's come a ways in the past couple of weeks. And you can see a more hazy atmospheric light emanating from the top. And I tend to do that. I'll put a lot of things into a painting, and then I'll take a lot of things out. So some changes in color sequence as well. I've been really exploring pink again lately. There's some horizontal action with fingers going across, just like hatching in a drawing as a way to create volume and materiality. Is not quite finished. And then the other 13-foot one, which is also not finished. I thought it'd be fun to look at again, though. I'm looking a lot at Franz Foer. He was a Nazarene painter, spelled P-F-O-R-R. And I like the way he arranges his elements in the rectangle, especially when he uses figures in a landscape. I just like the way they ping-pong back and forth, and they keep the eye continually regenerating in the rectangle. You don't really need to know that to look at this painting, but that's what I'm thinking about. When I begin a body of work, I consider intent and execution, or more simply, what and how. What will be the conceptual framework, the engine of the painting? What are the ideas? And how will the stuff, how will the paint underscore those ideas and present them in a concise way. And the way I know the painting is finished is when the what and the how are exactly the same thing. I hear that question a lot, and another way I answer it, how you know when the painting is finished, is Picasso said that a finished painting is a dead painting. So I always try to stop just before I'm finished. That's the smart-ass answer. One of the compositional tools we use as painters is something William Dunning calls compositional climax. And it basically involves large, low-contrast areas, simple shapes around the periphery of the painting that gradually get higher in contrast and tighter and smaller in detail as you start to reach the focal point or the climax of the painting, the emanation point of the energy. And there may be little detonations along the way, but ultimately there'll be sort of a pressure point, a climax of the composition. Another way I like to describe it is if you take a water balloon and squeeze one end of it, the other end bulges out. That's kind of the idea of creating a pressure point in a painting. I know it's kind of a disgusting analogy, but as painters, all we have is visual material. This is how we speak. And this is one of the ways we can speak clearly and directly through the arrangement of visual material. And the idea of a focal point is certainly not consistent through all painting. Pollock's drip paintings, for example, eliminate the notion of a focal point in favor of an overall atmosphere that sort of washes over you and around you. In a sense, I guess the focal point is the actual rectangle itself. But I asked them to put up a couple of examples here. The first one is a Caravaggio. And again, if you look at the periphery of the composition, you can see rather low contrast, large, simple shapes that gradually move inward and get higher in contrast until you get to the detonation of the wound in Christ's side with higher contrast and more detail. One of my favorite 19th century painters is William-Adolphe Bouguereau. He's a fabulous painter. His command of line, his sensitivity to tone, and his drawing skills are exemplary. And they first struck me in college. I've loved his work ever since, and I've made many figure studies from Bouguereau's paintings. One of my favorites is Nymphs and Satyr, painted in 1873, which is also the first Impressionist exhibition in Paris. I've always been attracted to artists who are, on one hand, committed to tradition, but also are highly individualistic and inventive. Figures like Bouguereau, or Richard Strauss, or George Tooker, who passed away recently. This painting is its own beginning and its own end. Everything you could possibly need is right there in the rectangle. The composition regenerates over and over. It's also set on a pond, and anything to do with a pond immediately seduces me. Look at the curves in the interlocking arms of the two figures on the top that create an S. William Hogarth's curve of beauty. Also the curving lines and the lighting, which is hazy and gauzy, for me connotes a sense of lust and desire and unfulfilled longing. A story that can't be finished, which is related to John Keats' Ode on a Grecian Urn, which I'm reading vis-a-vis this painting. Matisse was a pupil of Bouguereau, and perhaps it was Matisse's rebellion against academia that helped plant the seeds for modern art. Either way, Bouguereau dies in 1905 in the heat of Fauvism. And man, sometimes I'm in a certain mood and only Bouguereau will do.